Good evening. On behalf of the Itkin family, Yeshiva, and Lubavitch Center, welcome to Shloshim commemoration for our beloved Rabbi Itkin. As we just saw in the video that the Rebbe spoke at the Shloshim of the Rebbetzin, based on the pasuk from Shlomo Melech says, Vehachai Yossi I'm not sure why, but the Rebbe always referred to it as Yitein, as the Rebbe mentioned in the video, and throughout the entire year of Avelis for the Rebbetzin, every Farbrengen the Rebbe spent and mentioned that everything that the Rebbe spoke about always followed. We're always used to hearing the Rebbe saying that the Hiran Avelis Hashem, the lesson in the service of Hashem, throughout the year, the Rebbe always prefaced that with Vehachai Yitein, that the living should take to heart and to be a living example of the lessons. So tonight's program will be in that setting of a Vehachai Yitein, of the living, which I think in Pittsburgh, the living, the life, we associate with Rabbi Itkin as the life of Pittsburgh, which we are here now to continue to take to heart. And the lessons that and the environment of today, and the true spirit of Rabbi Itkin, will be of Vehachai, of life. If there's a few words that come to mind when we think about Rabbi Itkin, of Vehachai Yitein, but we need to apply to ourselves, is first of all the very word, as I mentioned, Vehachai, life, Aufgehebenkeit. As we all are accustomed that Rabbi Itkin was always, Aufgehebenkeit is a unique Yiddish word, uplifting. Rabbi Itkin was always uplifting those around him. And so we hope that tonight's program will be a program of Aufgehebenkeit, of uplifting, positive, simcha, of increasing in our personal ability to be besimcha, joyous, as we saw the Rebbe saying, that halacha requires that there has to be a progress in Avelos, and that at some point, halacha requires us to be ufgeeben, uplifted, and besimcha and lebedigkeit. Another important element that Rabbi Itkin always embodied and spoke about, and particularly in the last few years, every time I spoke to him, this was always the topic, was the importance of community, Achdus and Avos Yisroel, which they so beautifully, he's so beautifully embodied together with Rabbi Itkin. And I'll share a story. One of Rabbi Itkin's son-in-laws is a classmate of mine, Rabbi Yossi. And when he got married, this was before I moved to Pittsburgh, it was the summer before I moved to Pittsburgh, right before I moved to Pittsburgh. And I don't even remember what the context was. But he said something about my in-laws, they have so much obviously so that that's what they would do, A, B, and C. I don't even remember what the context was. And I was like, wow, this guy's really smitten by his in-laws already. He's like, he wasn't married, engaged, he's talking about how they have so much obviously so. Then I came to Pittsburgh and I realized that he was just saying the truth. And so hopefully today's evening will also be an evening of, as the community coming together, to support each other in the Aufgehebenkeit and uplifting each other. One of the important elements that, as a mashpia in the community, is also the importance of not only what we hear here tonight for ourselves, but the importance of sharing it with others as well, those are here or those are not here. When I came to Pittsburgh, Rabbi Itkin was obviously the age of could be my parent, my father, and I'm working along him as a colleague. And I understood very quickly what Chazal used the expression as a Talmid Chaver. A Talmid is a student, a Chaver is a friend. That doesn't, I know nowadays the in thing is to call your students friends, but I'm not sure that's Torah. I think that comes from elsewhere. So what does Talmud Chaver mean? What does the student of friendship come from? And I quickly understood that on one hand, obviously, I'm Rabbi Itkin's Talmud student, learning from him not just Torah, but also what it means to be a Chaver Dan Holod of the Mesifta and in Shlichus. And at the same time, he treated his colleagues, regardless of age, like a Chaver. He wouldn't come to you and say, look, I have an idea, this is what we should do. This is what we have to do. It was always like asking an eitzah, what do you think it should be, how it should be? And he obviously knew what he wanted. He wasn't really waiting for what you thought. He was waiting for you to understand of what he thought was importance. And again, this is hopefully for tonight that we can, again, walk out of this program here with that Aufgehebenkeit, togetherness, and the ability to impact those around us in the friendly manner that Rabbi Itkin shared with us all. A couple of household issues. Number one, another important element of Rabbi and Mrs. Itkin is the sensitivity to everyone's needs. And Mrs. Itkin asked me to share that we have a big program ahead of us here tonight, and everyone's welcome to sit here a long night. But if you need to go, Mrs. Itkin asked not to feel, especially if it's for a shir or something, don't feel obligated to stay back. And in Rabbi Itkin's spirit, it's not going to be a rush program here. We're here to enjoy and stay. There's no rush. But again, if anyone needs, they can certainly go. I think that's the most unique announcement anyone ever asked me to say at an event. Obviously, Yisroel again. We're going to begin with reciting a tefillah of every event that Rebbe was particular. Should be Teira Ved Gimil's Chasadim. We'll begin with a tefillah, with the prayers of Tehillim. Ask Rabbi, one of the fellow Shluchim here in town and a close friend of Rabbi Itkin, Chavrusa with Rabbi Itkin, Rabbi David Friedman, to lead us in Tehillim, followed by some words from Rabbi Silver, who both together worked with Rabbi Itkin on the Vaad, as Rabbi Itkin participated, led the Vaad Kashrus, as well as took some of those responsibilities as well, followed by a Siyum. We'll also sing some Niggunim here with, I think there'll be some background music here, but we're at a purpose of a Shloshim. It's not really supposed to be music. So the Rav said the music's there to enhance the singing. So when the Niggunim are being sung, it's halachically required for everyone to participate and sing. Don't just listen in.
Shir Hamalos LeDavid, Somachti Be'emrim Libeis Adinoi Neilech. Oim Dois Hoyu Ragleinu Bishorayich Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim Habenuya Ki Ir Shechu B'Allah Yachtov. Shesham Alushvatim Shifteya Eidus LeYisroel Lahoidos LeShem Adinoi. Kisham Ayashvu Kisois LeMishpat Kisois LeVeis David. Shalu Shaloim Yerushalayim Yishloyu Oyavoyich. Yehi Shalom B'Chelech Shalva B'Armen Oisayich. למען החי בראיוי עד אברונו שלום בוך. למען בייס אדינוי אלוהינו אבקשותיו לך.
My first introduction to Rabbi Itkin was about the first week that I came here, I think 34 years ago. There was a bar mitzvah here, the old Beis Medrash over there, and he befriended me, came over, schmoozed about a Gemara somewhere. I came for the Kiddush, it was afterwards. One thing that you noticed about Rabbi Itkin is, you see the picture here, his smile. His smile was there all the time. He was a Leibediger person. I think that's the best way to describe him. He was Leibedig. Leibedig really means alive. That's really what it means. And that's the theme over here, Vehachai, Yitein. He was a Leibediger mensch. And always had a witty thing to say. Always had something, a witticism to say. And working with him was his derech eretz for everybody was phenomenal. His derech eretz was just, he addressed everybody with real derech eretz, something that we should all emulate. We should all copy the way he addressed people, the way he treated people. Real derech eretz, with a smile, with a joke, with sometimes a good pat on the back. A Leibediger mensch. And that's maybe why the theme over here is so positive. And talking about a positive theme, he once said over the following. It was the day of his chasana, and he had some time, I think he was waiting to go into the Rebbe for Yechidus, and he didn't know what to do with himself for that little bit of waiting time. So he said, I said to myself, I'll say Yitein lecha. Yitein lecha is full of bracha, full of good, positive things. It's a good thing to say on the day of a chasana. And when I heard that, I thought, that's fantastic. I mean, I don't know how many people do that, but whenever you say Yitein lecha, think about that. Think about that this is Rabbi Itkin. A few years ago, we went to Baltimore for a kashrus seminar, sort of, for Rabbonim. And I went with him, and in the introduction, right in the beginning, when they were introducing the whole seminar, this is the Star K, they right away said, we're very happy that Rabbi Itkin is here. They singled him out. Rabbi Itkin, who's been a friend of the Star K for so many years, and in fact, they were discussing things with him, ideas, thoughts, tricky situations, how you come up with an idea. And Rabbi Itkin was, I don't know if, like you said before, I don't know if there's an English word for it. He was a little bit of in some respects, a Kunstmacher. I don't know how you translate that, but he sometimes came up with an idea that people didn't think of. Huh? Creative, yeah, it was more than creative. It was more than creative. And he was respected. He was respected for his yedias, for his knowledge in the world of kashrus, both in the practical side of it and in the lomdus, in the halacha, in the how to apply the halacha to practical situations. He was highly respected and highly valued. He was consulted by big mumchim, by big experts in the field. He was known as a mumcha and a creative. He had good ideas. It was a pleasure to work with him. He did a lot of work, which most people don't know about. Even I didn't until I had to start doing some of it. And I realized how hard it was and what he'd been doing all the years. Even though over the years he took me along a few times. He came to me, he used to, when something came up, he used to present it to the Rabbonim. So he called one of the Rabbonim, and sometimes it was me. The other Rabbonim, to talk it over, whether this can be done, that can be done, what should we do about this? So the person who has a chiyus, he's a lebendiger mensch, he's full of positivity, bracha, Yitein lecha, and a person who is creative and thinks about out of the box, that's the best way to put it, out of the box, and derech eretz, excellent derech eretz, pure, complete derech eretz, treats people with respect, treating people with covered with respect, addressing people like a mensch, and always with a smile, and always with joy, with lebendig. Lebendig. That's the word for it. And it's going to be missed. We're going to have to fill in that gap. And while maybe everybody here is not cut out to fill in his professional gap, the gap that he's left as a professional, but we can certainly fill in the gap of being positive, being lebendig, being witty, looking at things with a positive way, and being a bit more creative and thinking out of the box when a situation looks like it's difficult and there's no way out, trying to figure something out. And if we continue that, we'll be able to still feel a little bit of his hashpah in the town.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I could just imagine my father looking at this crowd and cringing. That is all about him. I was asked to give a Siyum on Mishnah. Besides for my father being a one who was always lebedik, always pushing people to Fabring and learn Chassidus, he had a tremendous amount of learning he used to do on a daily basis, tremendous amount of shiurim, both in Gemara, both in Chassidus and in Nigla. So it's known that one of the things that we do in memory of a loved one, in memory of a departed one, is we learn Mishnah. Mishnah has the same Yossi, has the same letters as the word Neshama. This last Mishnah right here is actually quite appropriate for what my father really stood for, what really meant a lot to him. So I will share it, and then we will say a Kaddish. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said that what's going to happen, Asir HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahanchil chol tzadik v'tzadik shlosh meis v'asara olamais. Will come a time that Hashem will want to reward all his tzaddikim, and he will give them 310 worlds, as it says, lahanchil oyev yesh v'yitzrei amalei. I will give to my loved ones yesh, and their storehouses or their with all their money will be full. It's very interesting here that there's the language of yesh, because anybody who studies a little Chassidus, yesh is the epitome of everything you don't want to be. But here, the Mishnah is telling us that what? Somebody who studies Torah, somebody who does the mitzvahs, they are going to get yesh. What's yesh? 310. What's 310? So if we look, there are 613 mitzvahs, plus 7 mitzvahs d'Rabbanan. We put it together, it's 620. Divided in half, we get yesh, we get 310 worlds. Interestingly here, the Mishnah says tzaddik v'tzaddik, that all tzaddikim, both tzaddikim, coming from the entire Mishnayos, there's a lot of back and forth of different tzaddikim, different rabbis, going back and forth arguing, and here the Mishnah is telling us that each one of them, even though they may not have agreed with a fellow person, is 100% correct, 100% holy, 100% a tzaddik, and they, so to speak, will inherit. Another interesting thing we see that is no single person will inherit everything. You can only get, so to speak, up to half, 310. To truly inherit the entire Torah, all 620 mitzvahs, you need to have, obviously, Yisroel, you need to have Shalom and be with a fellow tzaddik. And the end of the Mishnah discusses, Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, Loi matzah kadosh baruch hu kli machzik brach l'Yisrael. Hashem cannot find a vessel strong enough for the blessings to hold all the blessings of Yisrael, except what is the blessing, what is the vessel that can hold all the brachas that Hashem would like to give us? That is Hashalom, the peace, as the Torah tells us, Shenemer, Hashem moiz la'am Yitein, Hashem yivarech, Hashem mevashalom. Hashem wants to give strength to his people. Hashem gives the blessing of strength. And we see here the inyan of shalom. Shalom was something that was extremely important to my father. Anytime there's any sort of controversy, he would stay far, far from it. That is something I'm trying to emulate him, and I find it very difficult to do sometimes. I have a lot of opinions. Sometimes it's for both sides of everything. But with that, I would like to say Kaddish Rabbanan and thank everybody who took part in learning of the entire Mishnah during the last 4 weeks. What? The entire Mishnah was actually finished twice, 2 times, literally by people from the entire world. So I guess on a certain level, there's a global Siyum. Not a Siyum Shas yet, but a Siyum Mishnah. Yiskadal v'yiskadash v'rabba v'yalmad v'racharuse v'yamlach machuse v'yatzmach v'kane v'kare v'sheichei v'chayeichen v'meichen v'chayi v'chol beis Yisroel v'agol v'zman kare v'imru amen yesh v'rabba v'varach l'olam v'yamaya yisparech v'yishtabach v'yispar v'yisroimon v'yisnaseh v'yisadar v'yisallah v'yisalol shmei t'kushra v'richu v'yedlon v'kol v'chasa v'shirasa t'shmachasa v'nechamasa d'amiram v'yama v'imru amen Al Yisroel v'Harabonim v'Altein v'Al Tamid Yisamidein v'Al Kol Mondaskim v'Raisa Tivas Nodein v'Div v'Chol Asar v'Asar Yehei Eloheinu l'Chayin Shlom Rabba Chinu v'Chista v'Rachmin v'Chayin v'Richinu v'Zoyinu v'Richa v'Kana min Kolam Avod v'Shmaya v'Imru Amen Yehei Shlom Rabba min Shemaya v'Chayin Toiv Aleinu v'Kol Yisrael v'Imru Amen Ois Hashem v'Imru Oyas Hashem Aleinu v'Kol Yisrael v'Imru Amen
Rabbi Itkin's Shloshim be appropriate if it'd be more like a Farbrengen. Rabbi Itkin's entire life was a Farbrengen. At a Farbrengen, we sing Niggunim. And by the way, after the formal part of the Farbrengen, it will continue next door informally, and everyone's encouraged to join. This is not a solo. Everybody's encouraged to sing along. Niggunim that were chosen by the family that Rabbi Itkin particularly appreciated.
Yeah.
I could hear Rabbi Itkin telling me, Yossi, do me a favor, don't speak about me. Yud Shvat's around the corner. Sag mir ein Wort wegen Yud Shvat. So I'll follow what I believe would be his instructions. The Frierdiker Rebbe was born in 1880. At the age of 21, in 1901, he was already running the yeshiva and in many other things which he was involved with, which caused him a lot of stress. He writes in a letter, Beis Nissen, Tafresh Samach Aleph, Eini chas al hazman sheli. I'm not concerned about the amount of time I have to invest into the work. Asher yoker hu li mikesef rav. Time is more valuable to me than a lot of money. Eini chas al briusi. I'm not concerned about my health. I've been up already for many nights without sleeping. He says, I committed the following. Yaver alai ma. Whatever happens to me. Al mishmarti e'moida. At my post, on my watch, I will stand. Those words that the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, Al mishmarti e'moida, actually come from the Navi Habakkuk. And there are numerous interpretations as to what that means. And so as David explains, that someone who has a job to stand ala mishmar, to protect, is a shomer who doesn't depart, he doesn't leave his job, his responsibilities under any circumstance. He's ready, he stands ready to fulfill and to do and to involve himself whatever is necessary. Mitzvah Siyum says, Mishmarti and Mishmeres is davar halmutal al harbe b'nei adam. That this refers to a job that needs to get done by many, many people. And as I reflect on the words of the Frierdiker Rebbe and Rabbi Itkin, I apologize in advance. Rabbi Itkin was named after the Frierdiker Rebbe. And to me, one of the best ways to sum up Rabbi Itkin, that he was al mishmarti amoida. That means he was ready to do whatever was necessary at any time, at any place. He was ready to respond to a situation and do and contribute in the way that only he knew how to do so. I have so many stories to tell, but there's other speakers after me. But I could just tell you, in addition to working with him in Yeshiva and hearing from him his care and his concern and countless conversations about individual bochum and individual situations, Rabbi Itkin had a minhag that from time to time he would call me. It was usually pretty late in the evening. There's a shalom bayis issue. There's an individual kid who's dealing with a problem. Let's go and take care of it. I remember when we won the Supreme Court case, and it was, we were able to put up the menorah. Let's go put up the menorah. A little while later, someone defaced it. Let's go. We have to go with spray paint and spray it out. My recollections of Rabbi Itkin was that he was not just concerned about Yeshiva and Lubavitch Center and the community and individuals. He was al mishmarti amoida. He was waiting anxiously, what does the Eibishter want me to do at this given moment to fulfill the shlichus? And he did it as a second interpretation of Mitzvah Siyum, not as an individual. It was never about him. It was about the group. Let's go, come with me together. He was equal, didn't have to be him. He didn't want the attention, he didn't want the honor, because people who have that approach, what am I supposed to do at this given moment? How am I supposed to respond? They don't think about, am I going to get the honor, et cetera, et cetera. They think about the job that has to get done. I just want to conclude with an interpretation on those same words, al mishmarti amoida from the Marikara, one of the Mefarshim on the Navi. He says, Amar HaNavi, Ribono shel Olam, eini zaz mikan. Ribono shel Olam, I'm not going to leave here. Ad shetoidieni kates golazeh, until you inform me the end of Golus. I am definitely sure that Rabbi Itkin is tummeling Lamaila. I'm sure somewhere he found a lot of great people. I'm sure he ran into my mother, who they hosted at their Shabbos table so many years, and he said, let's go, we got to demand of Moshiach that he come already. And there too, Al Mishmarti Amoida, he's standing strong and firm and demanding the Eibusher should listen to his plea and once and for all bring the Geula at a time we'll be reunited with him and all our loved ones. As you may notice, tonight there are representatives from the Lubavitch Center, from Yeshiva, from, I guess, Yeshiva, and then there's going to be a Talmud of Rabbi Itkin. We're now going to ask a dear friend of Rabbi Itkin and the community, Mr. Zev Rudolph, who came back special to participate in tonight's Shloshim, to share a couple words representing the friends.
First of all, bear with me. It's the first time I'm thinking back in all my years I've been around, first time I've ever spoken at a Shloshim. But when Mrs. Itkin calls, she didn't even ask me to say yes or no. It was just like, you're speaking Tuesday night, you'll be in Pittsburgh and you'll speak. And obviously my relationship with the Itkins and Mrs. Itkin and the family and the girls and the sons, to say they're a special family is an understatement. An old friend of mine once told me many years ago that most of your events and most of the things that you do on a day in and day out basis in life doesn't raise the needle. It pretty much keeps your life the same. But there's only a few events in one's life that does really change everything. And I think we can all look back on those events and think in our personal lives that certain things have had a major change. And about 30 years ago in this room, when through Hashgacha Pratis, I ended up sitting, Rabbi Itkin pulled a seat up to the end of his table because I was looking for a seat, and he had me sit next to him, and I never moved from that seat. And that was a life-changing event for me. We developed a relationship over the last 30 years that really was a bond beyond comprehension. We spent many Shabbosim together, many Yom Tovim together. We've spent times in many Farbrengens in Crown Heights and in South Africa where he came for our kids' chasana, and in many places in between. Literally thousands of hours together. And he was the quintessential mensch, and he exuded Ahavas Yisrael like nobody I ever saw. He was a giant. And it's interesting that in his years he got so involved in the field of kashrus. And as we know, the mantra of Chabad, and it was one of my first Devar Torahs, Ba'aloscha, when Morty's bar mitzvah, was a lamplighter. And not only was Rabbi Itkin a lamplighter, but how many lamplighters that we all try to be carry a torch in their car on a day in and day out basis. And this truly represented who Rabbi Itkin was, if those of you who know him, because he always had a torch. And I was the recipient of some of these endeavors many times, whether it was my mother's grill, or whether it was an event at the Federation, or whether it was different events that were going on in the community. He so quietly and selflessly took care of each and every one of our needs, not just ours in this community, but in the entire community, so that we could eat at a certain event. There were countless times I would call him, literally as I was pulling in, and say, Rabbi Itkin, what can I eat? What can't I eat? And he was so patient and so understanding. He should have said, Zev, you're such a pain. But he never did, and he was just so sweet. And it's something that I think it's really, we need to carry on this kindness and this act of a lamplighter to, in our daily lives and carry it on forward. As I was thinking about what to say today, I got a call from Rabbi Kasriel Shem Tov, who happened to have been in New York. He's from Mayanot. Many of you know him. And he said, what are you doing in Pittsburgh? I said, I came for the Shloshim of Rabbi Itkin. I said, you had a relationship? Or maybe he said, I was very close with Rabbi Itkin. He said, you know what my story is with Rabbi Itkin? I said, no, I really have no idea. He said, in the 80s, a student by the name of Yaakov was in Yeshiva here in Pittsburgh for a short time. And in that following summer, he ended up in Detroit, where Rabbi Shem Tov was a counselor. Rabbi Shem Tov was a bacher. And he said, Rabbi Shem Tov said, Rabbi Itkin used to call me several times a week to see how Yaakov was doing. This one bacher who happened to go to Detroit to go to camp, he said, and then the following year, Ora Hanan in Los Angeles, this Bacher ended up there, and Rabbi Shem Tov ended up there as a Shliach. And he said, we were in touch on a weekly basis the entire year about this Bacher Yaakov, to make sure he was comfortable, make sure everybody was treating him well, to make sure he was happy in the yeshiva. And I'm thinking, and Rabbi Rosenblum and some of the other rabbis mentioned it, I can be sure he is organizing his favorite word, a grandiose Farbrengen up on high as we're all sitting here and storming the heavens to bring Mashiach. And I just want to close with one personal regret, which I'm going to resolve tonight. When I called a few weeks ago during when he was in Canterbury, I don't like to say the word, when he was in Canterbury in Lawrenceville, and I called Rabbi Munshine, and his wife took the phone and she said, I'm not sure if my father can hear, but if you want to say a few words, I'll put the phone up to his ear. And Mrs. Rebbetzin Munshine put the phone to his ear, and I said, Rabbi Itkin, and every time we talked, and we spoke at least every week for the last 30 years, and even more so in the last 10 years. And every time he would conclude the conversation, he used to always conclude by saying, Zev, I love you. And it was so heartwarming to hear a guy who grew up next door to 770. I grew up in Pittsburgh more on a golf course than next door to 770. And we were so connected. And I responded when the phone was put there, I said, Rabbi Itkin, I love you too. But after I'd hung up, I regretted the fact that what I should have said was, Rabbi Itkin, thank you for affecting my life, changing my life, and having such an effect on our entire Pittsburgh community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rudolph. Rabbi Altein mentioned Vehachai Yitein Alibai, how in every single Farbrengen of the year after the Rebbetzin passed away, the Rebbe mentioned Vehachai Yitein Alibai. What's interesting is, how many times did the Rebbe actually mention the Rebbetzin per se? Something about her, something you could learn from her? You could count on one hand, less than 5 times throughout the entire year, that the Rebbe actually mentioned the Rebbetzin. But the Rebbe constantly mentioned every single Farbrengen, started off and continued with the theme of Vehachai Yitein Alibai, something we could learn. My father, Baruch Hashem, and many, many friends, he learned during his years in Yeshiva, he would always say, he would repeat what he heard from Mrs. Posner, Alav Shalom, when she was asked, who's your favorite grandchild? She would say, the one sitting next to me. He would say, who's my favorite Talmud? He would always say, the one sitting next to me, the one next to me now. There is countless Talmidim, thousands of Talmidim have gone through being with him over the years, and many of them have reached out, felt how my father spent many, many hours special giving them attention. I just want to point out several things that were just important to him. First of all, his idea of learning. He told me once when he was a bacher, he spent his time actually learning, not dilly-dallying around. He told me what happens after you're married is one thing, but when you have time, sit and learn. I actually sat and learned. During his free time, he would be sitting and learning at every opportunity. There were several people in our community who told me that every time they go to the oil, they ask a bracha for the community. Rabbi Itkin said, when we go to the oil, don't ask only about yourself, about your personal needs. Ask for the kehillah, ask for the community. Ask for everyone. And they said every time they go to the oil, they write, they ask a bracha for the community, for everyone else. He always would go over to everyone in shul. A new person, Shalom Aleichem, welcome to Pittsburgh, where you from? Welcome every single person in shul. He wasn't usually the person who would look from far, who is that, who is that? He would actually go over to every person, welcome them. all of his many things he would do he would never ask for remuneration to get paid for. He kashered over the years dozens, maybe hundreds of houses in Pittsburgh. Rabbi Altein could say in his Chabad house, how many people, he one time asked, how many people here did Rabbi Itkin kasher their kitchen? And almost everybody raised their hand there. He would never take money for kashering a kitchen, especially someone who wanted to become kosher. For fabrengens, he would fundraise. For being a gabbai, he would do it amanash leila kalba pras. He says, Hashem will pay me back with nachas from the children, with gezunt, with simcha. We'll all be amanash leila kalba pras. His name is Yosef Yitzchak. When Avraham named his son Yitzchak, he said, Kol Hashem meya yitzachak li. Whoever hears will be besimcha, will be happy. Yosef's idea of adding on, Yosef Yitein v'yachzer v'Yitein. My father's theme was always adding simcha, bringing simcha to everybody he saw, everybody he met, greeting everybody with a smile. He would always go out of his way just to make people feel good. I remember one time when I was a little kid. I must have been about 10 years old. I was late to school. And I lived next door to the school, right? I lived over here, and outside of our window, you could see the gym, you could see the school. My father asks me, do you want to ride to school? I said, yes, for sure. So we walked about 2 blocks down to the car. We got into the car, he drove me around to the front of the building. He realized that somebody needed some special time, some special attention then. And he made sure to give me give a ride to school. So if you say Vehachai Yitein Alibai is to look out, how can you make another Yid b'simcha? How can you go do something without asking anyone else? Ask someone's opinion and actually be'emes want to hear what they have to say with a bittul. One last thing I would like to say, and to bring attention to the back left corner of the room. When my father was about 15 or 16 years old, so the age of maybe Shir Beis or Shir Gimel Yeshiva Ktana, and he was a bacher in Yeshiva with his friends. He had 16 boys in his class. 14 of them were named, 11 of them were Yosef Yitzchak, and other 3 were Yitzchak or Yosef, a mix of the two. And the Rebbe at that point was not being Magia, was not editing Maamarim. Very rarely, not common. There was a chassid named Rabbi Ben Sion Shem Tov who came to the class of young boys, 15, 16 years old, and he told them, he riled them up. He says, you know why the Rebbe is not editing being Magia, Maamarim, and Sichos? It's your fault. Because you're not kaching, you're not involved enough in the Rebbe's Sichos and Maamarim. You have to be much more involved in the Rebbe's Sichos and Maamarim. So from then on, they started, this group of boys, his class, would review, would chazer, be mikchazara, every maimer and every sikh of the Rebbe, they would write it down. And Rebbe Shem Tov, he went over to them, and he told them, I want you to give me your hanachas, your writings that you wrote down, your review of the Rebbe's Maamarim. And they didn't know what he wanted to do. They thought he wanted to read it. They gave it over to him. Little did they know that he gave it into the Rebbe to be Magia, to edit, and to look over. And there's one Maimer, Melukat Aleph, called the Maimer of Kisisa, which my father is actually based on my father's Hanacha. My father was about 15 or 16 years old at that point, and they sent in that Hanacha, generally mainly his Hanacha, was worked on a little bit. They sent it into the Rebbe was Magia it, the Rebbe edited it, and it's printed in Sefer Amar Melukat Aleph. And there were several other ones he was involved in, but that one is mainly based on his Hanacha. And in the corner, we're making a Chalukas, just like we divided the Mishnayos for the Shloshim. So for the year, we are dividing all the Maamarim Melukat, the Maamarim which the Rebbe edited and were printed in the 6 Svarim, and Sefer Maamarim Melukat. And there's about 180 Maamarim, so that's, Mitzvah Hashem, going to be divided to learn until his Yartzeit, first Yartzeit coming up on Zayin Tevis. And the main thing, of course, he would always ask, and from everybody else, as he said by Rabbi Ephraim Rosenblum's Shloshim, that Rabbi Rosenblum, he wouldn't want speeches. He would want simcha nefabrengen. And so my father definitely would only want simcha, and everyone should be b'simcha, and only good news from now on. Shkoyach.
So I'm here representing all of the Talmidim that Rabbi Itkin was able to influence all through the years. And I feel very privileged because Rabbi Itkin actually picked me out as a Talmud from when I was just a kid. And it again shows Rabbi Itkin was always on the lookout for Talmidim. The year that Rabbi Itkin moved to Pittsburgh, so my sister got married, and I was 7 years old. And I was, the wedding was at the William Penn Hotel, and Rabbi Itkin called me over in the middle of the wedding, and he said to me, I want to tell you that my sister got married, my older sister got married when I was about your age, and I don't remember so much from the wedding. So I want you to stay here right now and make memories of the wedding as it is right now. And of course, the only thing I remember about my sister's wedding is Rabbi Itkin telling me to make memories. But that was Rabbi Itkin. He was always teaching, giving you that sense of how you would be able to live your life in a deeper, more beautiful way. And Baruch Hashem, I was able to have him as my teacher in high school for 3 years. And my father also arranged, and it's funny because my brother Penny, must be something about the Herman boys in Masechta Megillah. My father arranged one summer we would learn Masechta Megillah. And everybody's talking about how much Rabbi Itkin cared, but I want to just stress that Rabbi Itkin cared for you as the way that you showed up. And I would stay up late during the summers, and I would come to him, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go down to the newly renovated basement at the Itkin's home. And that's where we used to learn. And Baruch Hashem, there were beds there. So Rabbi Itkin would see that I was, we were trying to learn the Masechta, and I was nodding off. So he'd say, listen, Aaron, take a nap. I'll be back in a half hour. So I slept well, I learned well. And I think that's what Rabbi Itkin gave you, is that, what's a great teacher? A great teacher is that it's not just that you remember what they taught you, but you remember exactly how they made you feel. That every time when you think about them, you remember how they made you feel. And as my brother Pinny was saying, that Rabbi Itkin was a tzir, especially for, we grew up in Pittsburgh, what did we know? It was not just a tzir of what a chassid was supposed to be. I think even more powerful was that he believed that we could be chassidim. Which for kids growing up, in a Baal Tshuva house, and what did we know, and what, Rabbi Itkin believed in us. That we could become chassidim even though we didn't grow up next to 770. We could take a look at the way he lived his life. We could model ourselves after that, and we'd be okay. And I think that there's thousands and thousands of Talmidim that are chassidim today because Rabbi Itkin gave them a pathway. Here's what it looks like to be a chassid. You see? You can do it too, and I believe in you. And I think everybody, therefore, has these Rabbi Itkin moments that sort of stick in your mind. I have a 7-year-old moment, but I have so many other moments, whether it's going to New York, when he had his 15-passenger van. We also used to pack in more than 15 people. These trips to New York, the moments that you had with him, where you really, really felt you were the only one that he was talking to at that moment. You didn't feel like he was talking to a class full of Talmidim. He was talking specifically to you. And you knew it, because after class, he had something to say to you. He noticed. He noticed you were awake that day, you weren't awake that day. He was always making sure that you knew that he cared, and because he truly did. And that type of authenticity, that type of life is one that, Mirz Hashem, we should all aspire to. And it's not the same being in Pittsburgh and not seeing Rabbi Itkin walk through the door with that smile. So we all have to make sure that we put on that smile for each other, the one that Rabbi Itkin would have greeted us with.
I know I'm breaking a little bit of protocol. Usually you do not have a woman speaking at this event, but my husband's life was surrounded with the sphere of Malchus very much. And I really felt this Shloshim is going to be sort of representing different aspects of his life, and I think the feminine aspect of his life does have to be represented, and so I'm representing it. As growing up as Frum Yidden and growing up as Hasidim, we always knew the value of a mechitza. There's no question when there's a Shalom Zachar, I'm sorry, not a Shalom Zachar, bris, a bar mitzvah, and a wedding, you have a full-on mechitza. And I grew up very much knowing that. And we were very careful with the mechitza in our lives. I remember till today, in the room next door, it was the Munshines Sheva Brachas Friday night. The Munshines are related to us. They're our third cousins, which I didn't know. Well, they got related to us. And I know how valuable a mechitza is. So I had a U for the men, a U for the woman, and a huge, massive space. After all, it was only family Friday night, nobody else, and we're all related. And the scene, I will never forget the scene of my father and my father-in-law standing outside those doors and not coming in till the mechitza was up. And at that moment, I made a chalata. Whenever I make an event in my life, I will make an event that my father and my father-in-law will be comfortable coming to. Thus, we have the mechitza. I will refer to, I'll use the word Eibishter for Hashem. Eibishter means the one above. That's the word I'm most comfortable using. And I will be referring to some Hasidic concepts, but I will not be explaining them. So you'll try to get around that. When my husband and I started this journey that Hashem chose for us, we made 3 hachlatas. First, we will try to do it with grace. We will do it with great avas Hashem, and we will try to do it as stress-free as possible. Many, many people in the community ask, and the people all over ask this question, where did all our Tehillim go? An enormous, enormous amount of Tehillim was said. All us were made, classes, the world was stormed, my children were amazing at storming the world. Where did all of that go? And I want to tell you that our family saw where it went. First of all, it gave my husband, literally, it brought him life. It literally brought him life. And the next part, which I will be talking to, be the theme of my speech, will be all the silver lining in this difficult journey. That it was mamtik the dinim. Everybody's tehillim sweetened the difficult din that we were going through. Ashreinu matayv chalkeinu, u'manoim garaleinu, u'mayafa yerushasenu. My husband and I, there isn't a moment that we were not grateful that we have the schus to be raised as Chabad Chassidim. Because Chassidus looks at the Eibishter in a very different light. You look literally and learn about Getlichkeit and God. So we learn Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. Chassidus emphasizes very strongly the concept of Avinu, our Father. Hashem loves us as our Father, and He only wants what's good for us. And Malkeinu, He's our King. When a king is crowned, all he wants to do is give wonderful things to his subjects. He loves his subjects. Sometimes he has to do things that he's not so comfortable with, but it's always coming out of the avos of Hashem, the love from Hashem. So my husband and I, for the entire journey, literally, we felt Hashem holding us in our hands. There wasn't a moment we felt we were not guided from by Hashem. My husband would lay in bed night after night, and he would say, look how lucky I am. Look at all the brachas that Hashem showered me in my life. As many of you know, my husband had a chush for friendships, connecting to people. That was one of his greatest, greatest strengths. He has many, many friends of the heart. He had many friends in his growing up years who were very pivotal in forming who he was. I'm not going to enumerate his friends by name, because I will definitely miss one of them, but there is a known group, they're called the Kvutza of Miami. This is a group of boys who were sent on Shlichus for 3 years to Miami, and that literally formed their lives. They were brothers of the heart, literally and physically, and they've been in touch and been very, very close. Before this group left, the Rebbe told them they are a group of chosen Bachrim, and the Rebbe gave each of them a Tanya. When the Kvutza, spearheaded by my husband's very, very close friend, found out that my husband wasn't well, they made an initiative, and the first thing they did was they printed a Tanya in honor of my husband for Refuah Shlema. This Tanya was very, very precious to my husband, and he kept it on his desk, and he appreciated everything that it meant, and especially to this Kvutza, because my husband never left the house without walking around with the Tanya the Rebbe gave him when they went on Yechidus before they went to Miami. So to have a continuation when he was going through a challenging time in his life really, really meant a lot to my husband. My husband had many, many good friends. His very close friend was Shalom Charitanov, I want to mention because he's very, very close. Shalom's brother, Shmerel Charitanov, he would leave every single third day a beautiful, beautiful voice note to my husband. Chassidish Maises, interesting stuff. It was, I think a whole book can be written just on the voice notes that he left my husband. My husband would listen to them over and over and over again. My husband had a very close friend, Mayor Eichler, who when my husband was in Miami, he wrote many letters to Mayor Eichler that really gave the synopsis of what it means to be a chassid. Mayor Eichler, in his wisdom, held on to those letters, and he shared them with our family, and some excerpts of it are written up in the book that my children put together. My husband had also very close friends, Yossi Garari, Shimon Druk, Yassel Kesselman. These are all his old childhood buddies. My husband had many, 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 many close friends in Pittsburgh. He loved the community. By the way, I do want to reiterate this whole concept of my husband and I never went to the Rebbe or wrote a pan without writing for the community. We did it each individually without even knowing the other one was doing it. But the community is primary, and if we knew somebody in the community is going through a difficult thing, we would ask a special bracha for those people in the community. But I would like to mention our good friends, Dr. and Mrs. Hubener, my husband's very close friend, David Friedman. I have to give David Friedman a lot of credit. He literally tried to come and visit my husband every single day. He always knocked on our door and said, "Can I please see Rabbi Itkin? Can I please see Rabbi Itkin?" And the last year, it was really, usually my husband was really not up to visitors. I also want to thank Zalman Goldwasser very much. Zalman, every time a new sefer came out or something interesting, he immediately went and he bought it for my husband so that my husband should have something interesting to read. Those who know me know I'm not the type to boast about my children. The biggest compliment that I took from all my mothering, you try the best that you can, is one of my kids told me, "Ma, you see us for who we are. You see us for our good points and the points we need to grow in yet." But I do want to say that when they were faced with a very, very big test and they were squeezed, out came Shemen Zayis Zach, pure olive oil. I was very blessed and fortunate that my children and my sons-in-laws, who are literally sons to us, they are not sons-in-laws, my wonderful daughter-in-laws who are daughters to us, took turns every 3 days in the beginning of the journey. They took turns. They took off from school in order that I should be able to go to school. And everybody came all the time and didn't leave us alone. And there was just not enough words to say a thank you to them. There's many, many great silver linings that we had on this journey. And one of them was the fact that we had to stay in Pittsburgh. We have a very wonderful facility called UPMC. They're very competitive in the illness that my husband has. They're very, very competitive. They're one of the top in the world, and they have the latest treatments, so you don't have to travel anywhere. I told my husband, I used to say, imagine if we lived in New York, we have to schlep to Manhattan and to park in Manhattan, to come back from Manhattan. Everything was very, very close, and the latest things were right here. The Maggid of Mizrich spoke the union of, it says, how can a human doctor heal? He's only a human being. So, Rappa, Yerappa, the Torah says they're given the power to heal. And through what means are they given the power to heal? Through a malach. Every single doctor is assigned a malach. So the Maggid of Mizrich said that the greater the doctor, the greater the malach. And we got this, my father-in-law was very, very careful about only going to the top doctors and everything, because that's where the great malach is. Hashem blessed us with an amazing, amazing doctor, Dr. Rabbi Thomas, who was a Refa Yedid in this. He ended up being a Refa Yedid. And he said, Rabbi, while you're fighting, I will fight with you. And we had many people overlooking my husband's case, the RCCS, the head doctor from MIT Experimental Medicines. We had many people overlooking my husband's case. And they were in a spell. They could not get over the ingenuity of Dr. Thomas and what he's done. And everybody in the hospital knew our family. They knew we were a faith-based family. And they all kept on saying, you know, they give you this prediction, but they learned over the years, but to the rabbi, that prediction doesn't necessarily apply. And all that is definitely due to the Tehillim, that he got through many crises through the Tehillim. So much so, when they came over to us at the end, and we were planning to, you know, Mirz Hashem, to go home, that was our plan. And they called me in Matzah Shabbos and they said, Mrs. Itkin, sorry, your husband cannot go home. He has to go into hospice. And I was like, what? He says, no, the care that he needs, you cannot do it at home. There's only one unit, one facility in the whole town that has it, and we'll try to get you a bed there. So we were going to leave Monday afternoon into the hospice. Monday morning, Dr. Rabbi Thomas came to speak to my husband, and he said, Rabbi, he starts, we were all talking about you downstairs, referring to the doctor's lounge downstairs, and he said, we concluded, and this literally said, we concluded it was all from above. Even our medical intervention didn't do anything, it was all him. So as my kid said, that the fact that a non-Jewish doctor can recognize so clearly and openly the hand of Hashem, there's nothing greater than that. When they told our family that we have to go into hospice, it was really not an easy thing, but that was the Eibishter's final wonderful gift to our family. We had 8 days of being, first of all, I learned a lot going in there. The people who work there are nurses for many years, and what they do is they really give back the dignity to a person. People at the end of their life, they're at home, they're in the hospital. There's a very huge loss of dignity. There, they give you back your dignity. They treat you like a human being. And anytime we thank them, they would say, it's such an honor, it was our honor. I learned so much about how to treat a person. It was on a level of something else. But because it's set up like a home, there was a large living room, a large dining room, a large kitchen, and pretty much, you know, we took it over. And they allowed us. We're not supposed to really sleep there, but they closed their eyes and they let us stay there. And literally, if you want to call it a 24 hours, 8 days for bringing, that's what ensued. It was during Hanukkah, and every time somebody davened Hallel, they came in and sang Hallel with my husband. Every time they did Rambam, he did Rambam. They davened day and night. It was for bring-ins and learning, and anything, any Gemara, anything anybody had to learn over and over, group after group was coming in. And I have to give a special thank you to my grandchildren who stayed up through the night saying Tehillim to allow us to have our rest. And they stayed up through the night, night after night. So my husband was 24 hours with tefillah. And it was beautiful access. We had unfiltered access. The children had to their father, and it was a very special moment. And I told my kids, recognize the great gift that the Eibishter is giving us. He's giving us the gift of closure. Not many people get the time and the space in a beautiful serene setting. And as one of my kids came up with a tagline, they said, hospice takes care of the guf, and so the neshama can go in its own timeline. And another kid of mine said, you know, Ma, I felt I was connecting the whole time to the yechida of Tati's neshama. It says, Vehachai Yitein Alibo is the theme. Many decisions had to be made along this trip. I made some interesting decisions, and I'll share one of them with you. Some of my kids were questioning me, some of my in-law children were questioning me. But I decided sometimes you just have to teach by example. I grew up with many things were discussed sort of in an open way. We grew up with the concept of wills in my family. My mother's father, my Zaydav and Boruch, was sent to exile to Kazakhstan, and he knew the end was coming near, and he sent a letter to his wife, who was in Russia, and in it was his last will and testament. It's a very, very beautiful letter, how a chassid finishes the life, how he wraps it up, how he begs his children to follow in the way of Torah and to be meticulous with mitzvahs. So we grew up knowing that letter. My father's father, my Zayda Naftali, was very, very known for his wills. Every time he learned something new in halacha, he came across a medrash, he came across something else that had to do with the proper way of a person leaving this world, he updated his will. I mean, I already knew of 4 updates to his will, and us grandchildren and children knew many parts of the will that applied to us. So we did have this concept of wills in our family, spiritual wills. And some of my decisions were based on the fact that, you know, someone told me in America there's this fear, this cultural fear of talking about at the end of life what will be. But a Yid always has to prepare his whole life. You're living here, and it's a wonderful world, but also it's a time a Yid has to give a din v'cheshbon. And there's a way for a Yid to prepare himself and to go, and I'm talking about in a spiritual manner. So I decided different things I'm going to discuss openly with my children and talk about it, just to give them an example of how a Yid has to do things. So I do want to, and this I want to really, to my husband's very close friends, I want to say this following thing. My father left a beautiful will to my mother, because of course his father was a will writer, so we knew my father would read. And he wrote something individual to every single person. But to my mother he's asked my mother to please say his kapitel Tehillim every single day. And I thought that was one of the most beautiful things I ever heard, because every time my mother says his kapitel Tehillim, she's connected with him. She stays connected with him, and she does something beautiful for him up in Shemayim, and she gives him a gift every single day. When I heard that, I undertook that on myself. I started saying my father's kapitel Tehillim every single day. And many, many people, I've told them, you know, if you want to achlata the person you love, say their kapitel every day. So I'm asking my husband's close friends to continue saying his kapitel at least for this year. His kapitel is Ayin, as many of you know, it's 70. But Gimel Adar, which is coming up soon, is going to be his 70th birthday, and it will be Ayin Aleph. And I want to conclude again, Vehachai Yitein Aliboy. What are the things that really personify my husband? And I think a lot of you all know the same thing comes over and over and over again. It's the concept of shalom, peace. He was a man who intrinsically loved peace. One of his, from this group in Miami, one of them just told us a story that he remembers when a few guys, something was going on with 2 guys in the kibbutz and they weren't getting along. And it bothered my husband so much, he stayed up a whole night talking to them and literally crying till they made shalom. So shalom is something very, very close to him. Avos Yisroel, my husband is known for his Avos Yisroel. He had the ability to connect the heart to the heart. He was a man of action, but most of all, he did everything b'simcha. So that should be the rallying cry, and I just want to tell my children, haltzachon zum klamke, and you will have all the brachas in the world. If you hold on tight, you will have banei chayim, zayne revichai, and everything good. And we wish the Pittsburgh community, my husband is definitely davening for the Pittsburgh community up there, and for each of us, everybody's their needs. I can't tell you how many people used to write in for shidduchim and for babies and for all kinds of health things. He was always writing about the community. He loved you all, and thank you so much for honoring him with your presence.
Rosenblum said before, you can only imagine Rabbi Itkin would say. I could hear Rabbi Itkin's voice booming. Let's all give Rebbetzin Itkin a big bracha that she should continue to lead the community and bring everyone together with Gesundheit, with the Lebedigkeit, and Gesundheit Nachas. I'm not sure why you're worried about people leaving. There's more people here now than when we started, but one of the beautiful things tonight, I think, was that no one looked for anything original to say. Everyone said the same thing, because Rabbi Itkin is emes lamitai, and everyone in their own words said the same ideas about Rabbi Itkin, because that is Rabbi Itkin, what we heard here tonight. And as we mentioned, a chayit and a libay, may we all continue to do so. Itkin always loved sharing a chassidische ma'isa. The Rebbe said this by Fabrengen. In the Kisvei Arizal, the Arizal's writings, it says that you're not supposed to get stuck at night. So the Rebbe repeated the story a number of times, I believe more than once. At one time, he was walking in shul, and there was a tzedakah box. He took out some coins from his pocket, and he threw it into the box. So someone turned to him and said, hasnish, the Rebbe should know the Kisvei Arizal, they're not supposed to get stuck at night. So the Rebbe felt bad. So later that day went to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he told the Frierdiker Rebbe that he got a psak. He was told off for getting stuck at night, and he was feeling. So the Frierdiker Rebbe told him, you could be sure that the person who told you that probably doesn't get stuck by day. So it was bothering him that you're getting stuck at night. And we all know the Rebbe gave plenty of stuck at night. Everyone is familiar with the Sunday dollars, but the Rebbe gave many more times stuck at night after Maitiv to people to give tzedakah. So as we mentioned earlier, Teira, Veda, Gemilas, Chasadim, the Rebbe always insisted that every gathering should have all three elements. At Tefillah, we heard words of Teira. We can all do tzedakah right here, right now as well. Modern days, cash is king. It's not the king only moves one step at a time. It's not what people do much. Much people do electronic tzedakah, so you can do that here tonight as well. There's everyone on their chair. I know they were gathered, so if it's not on your chair, it's in a pile near you. There's two papers here of two tzedakahs that everyone can and please should participate in honor of Rabbi Itkin. You have the family, Rabbi Itkin's family is collecting here to buy a new mitzvah tank that will be stationed out of Binghamton, where Rabbi Itkin's daughter and son-in-law are one of the Shluchim, but will also continue. Binghamton's where the students are, as most schools, don't have a lot of time that they're in school. They're more out of school than in school. So there's when the students are not in Binghamton, the mitzvah tank will go around to other family members, hopefully including Pittsburgh, and to do Mivtzayim. We all know Rabbi Itkin's passion for Mivtzayim as a Shliach. It's something that he took very seriously. And so if everyone, if you don't know how to use a QR code, you can type into your phone, charity.com/Rabbi Itkin, to participate in that fundraiser in his honor. And second, there's a beautiful letter here from Rabbi Rosenblum and Rabbi Rosenfeld about a local memorial mikvah for Rabbi Itkin. While Rabbi Itkin had many hats that he wore here in Pittsburgh, his primary hat was a mashpia in the yeshiva, and part of the being mashpia in the yeshiva, as we heard from his students here tonight, was bringing the passion of Chassidus and Darkei Chassidus and to the students. And of course, one of those is the importance of going to the mikvah. And as Yeshiva is getting ready to move the Masifta to the new building in Greenfield, a new men's mikvah for the Bachram being built there in his honor. And here, again, there's no QR code here, so even if you don't know how to use one, charity.com, it's not on this paper, but charity.com/Rabbi Itkin mikvah. So all you have to do is add the word mikvah do the first one, Rabbi Itkin, then add the word mikvah and do the second, to give two charities to be able to help memorialize Rabbi Itkin's Darkech says Vehachai Yitein Libai in a Maisa Gashmi here in Eilamaza. Particularly, by the way, the students, if you haven't been reached yet, that means your class Memuna is not doing a good job, that the focus is on the alumni to participate in honor of Rabbi Itkin, each class together. Maybe it should help that both of these pulas should have a pula nimshachas and should bring about what the ultimate, the most important element, which is that we should be zeicha that the Shloshim begins tonight, that the Siyum of the Shloshim should be with Akitz of Rana Sheikh Niyafar, Nesidireinu Shlucha V'Reishenu. I will say that one thing is sorely missing in this event here. Chaim told me it's expected I do this before I come here, to say l'chaim. Rabbi Itkin would not have tolerated that there's no l'chaim here, but we could be mashlim. There'll be a fabrengen in the next room as soon as, I think there's one more video first.